You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 285. My name is Clark from 5 Card Guys on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Co-hosting with me, as usual, is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards. John's away this week, but hopefully he'll join us again for our next episode. Okay, off the top today, I think we joked about this on a previous podcast episode when we were talking about the debut patch cards and whether it could be used for sports other than baseball. And I think we even brought up the patch being used in wrestling or WWE, and it'll be right on their spandex underwear. Do you remember that?
Yes, that's the first thing Yeah,
you made that joke. Yeah. Anyway, guess what? It's happening, right? So, I assume it's going to be on the spandex. Well, wrestlers like John Cena and CM Punk, they actually wear T-shirts, so maybe it's going to be on their shirt. But the official Topps announcement is that there will be Wrestlemania patch autograph 1-of-1 cards, which will have the event-worn patch of the wrestler from the upcoming Wrestlemania 41 match, which is going to be huge. I don't know if you saw the pictures of the Wrestlemania 41 patch, but it looks amazing. So that's going to be on a 1-of-1 card. There's also going to be a main roster debut patch autograph 1-of-1 card, which will either have the Raw debut patch or SmackDown debut patch, depending on which division the wrestler debuts in. So if you're not a wrestling fan, that might sound confusing, but if you are, you'll know exactly what I just said. But Hyung, what do you think? Is this a gimmick or is this a brilliant move to get wrestling fans into cards?
I'm going to say both.
Okay. Or both.
But
all right.
I think it's very overall, okay, let's put the disclaimer on. I'm seeing it as a neutral individual right now. No attachment to WWE as a collector or as a fan, but just seeing it as someone who's involved in the sports card pop culture hobby, let's just say entertainment. Mm-hmm. I think Fanatics, like I said, I'm not pumping Fanatics' tires, but I believe in their resources and their leadership, and they understand kind of like what they're trying to accomplish in the kind of like the overall goal. So wrestling becomes very interesting because if you see kind of like the fundamentals of what's built wrestling over the past even few years, right? Even during that COVID period from a sports card hobby where Panini, had the licensing, and, there were speculations there whether, wrestling was going to be sustainable as a hobby. I know we had discussions, but yeah, overall, I think what WWE with now partnering up with UFC now and
right,
having a fan base that's growing the whole sport in general. That's where I see kind of like, wow, like as a whole, I believe in the vision of WWE as an entertainment piece, as a crossover to pop culture, which they're doing heavily, which is a massive marketing play. So in that sense, yes, like I understand why Michael Rubin and Fanatics and Topps are going into this direction with the collectibles and memorabilia. I think it's a huge untapped market. But when you zoom into now, that's where the gimmick comes in, right? Where it's like, it's humorous. It's funny. Like that's the first thing that comes to my mind is like, that's the conversation you're going to have. What are you going to have? Like the spandex of his crotch, like as the patch, like what are we talking? Like that's what's going to go through everybody's head, or at least like people who aren't in maybe the industry, maybe people in the industry have that thought. But bottom line is, I think, like I said, long term, I see this all as a long term play, and how it all unfolds is kind of like we're going to have the laughing moments, the embarrassing moments, the amazing moments, the overvalued moments during that whole process, right? So that's all we're seeing right now. And I'm bullish on it in general. Like, I think the WWE trading card market, sports trading card memorabilia market is continually growing. So I think there's going to be a huge demand. The amount of kind of like engagement that's happening on TikTok to the next generation as well with WWE content, multiplied with kind of like that Netflix partnership that they had. And we talked about this earlier before we had this recording about kind of like why media is so important and a backlog of a media catalog. So I think if you look at the rich history of WWE, WWF in general, like from the early 80s to late 80s to early 90s and then onwards, you have incredible amounts of media content in terms of from a fan base standpoint that's accessible. So to me, I believe in the market a lot as a whole, that I'm excited to see what they're doing in the sports card collectibles and horizontally implementing it into their other assets such as WWE, because from a Fanatic standpoint, even apparel is something that they have enormous amounts of leverage and flexibility along with the collectibles side of things.
Sure. No, I agree with you. And I certainly agree with you when you said, it's crossing over into pop culture now. I wasn't really huge into wrestling growing up. I watched, Randy Macho Man, Hulk Hogan, obviously, Andre the Giant, those guys. And then I wasn't hardcore about it. But now these days I'm like invested a lot more than I used to be because of, Logan Paul, like these crossovers that are just getting more people into WWE, what's going on in WWE. And I don't know if you saw recently on Andrew Schultz's podcast, Flagrant, Triple H was on it talking about wrestling, WWE, with the state of WWE right now for over 2 hours. And that's one of the more popular podcasts. So I think the WWE in particular is growing. I still think when it comes to their fans, trading cards isn't that big a thing yet. But I think this is, like I kind of teased, I think this is a brilliant move to get them into cards just by having something really cool and unique like this one-of-one autograph patch. Right now, it's primarily replica championship belts they're into and they're willing to pay $1,000 for it.
Hundreds of thousands.
For the older ones, for sure. But even the event that we had right here in Toronto, Roger, like on the news, I was watching local news. People are just shilling out $1,000 for a replica championship belts. You know what I mean? And so, if they're willing to spend that kind of money, cards, some cards are around that price. So why not, right? To get something cool, especially like I'm sure these one-of-one cards will go for way more than $1,000. But there are people willing to spend money. That's my point, right? And the other thing about what I've noticed lately is if you go to Fanatics Fest, I actually showed this to Will and Roy. If you go to Fanatics Fest website, 2025, the event's coming up in June in a couple months. They already have the primary list of autographs, people giving out autographs, the different athletes that will be there at the event. Literally every wrestler that's coming, Cody Rhodes, Rhea Ripley, The Undertaker, all sold out. They're the only ones that are sold out. You could still get one of Darryl Strawberry. You could buy that right now. You could still get one of like Cal Ripken Jr. He's a big guy, but there's still autograph tickets available. Literally every wrestler is completely sold out. So the diehard fan base of wrestling. Like that shows me that's how diehard they are. For sure. So it's amazing.
And I think to add to your point, the future marketplace, I don't think it's here right now. So it's not like I'm hyping up the market there's only a few cards that I would say in wrestling right now that I'm like, okay, I could see future value to this, or I would actually, get involved in this. But I think as in the next few years, you're going to see a lot more desirable stuff, because as they get people like The Rock back on it, and he's having massive, notoriety in the public eye. So I think stuff like one of ones of Rock, autographs, dual autographs, triple autos, these haven't yet been established in the marketplace. And then,
yes,
you take that other aspect that we always talk about in terms of what is technology going to bring on that side of future in collectibles, right? So I think from a fan experience with WWE, I think maybe that's the avenue where, the digital asset side of things start making more sense, because you have more accessible people with the crossover like Logan Paul, and then you could create other experiences that utilizes these tokens, right? So I think there's a massive upside in general, but it hasn't been established yet. So I think there are opportunities in the wrestling market where, these one of ones that go for ridiculous prices, they're laughable right now, right? Like we're like, who would buy that? Who's Logan Paul? But I think from a future standpoint, I think there's a lot more value than what the normal eye would kind of see when you're just looking at it from a surface level, right? So I think there's so much potential in that market. And I'll go even as far as I think there's, an opportunity for vintage in wrestling. When we say vintage, maybe, early 80s slabs, specifically the Hulk Hogan, PSA 9 and 10 with that huge sale, the PSA 9 sale. I think there's so much potential within that marketplace that you're not going to see it. You're not going to really see it until, I would say, 5 years, right?
Yeah, excellent point. And if you listen to my interview with Gary Vee, he says the same thing about fictional cards like Spider-Man, Marvel. Like as that base is growing, like his play is getting vintage cards of those. So he showed me his like rookie card of his Spider-Man, 1966, cool, yeah. Right? And he knows like that's kind of his play. But yeah, for sure, I agree. And one more thing I'll say about the growing popularity of WWE. Travis Scott, his Cactus Jack Topps series. So now he has one just dedicated to wrestling, a Cactus Jack Wrestling WWE card set. And Travis Scott is obviously big in pop culture right now, right? So yeah, like a lot of crossovers happening, and I think we'll get to that point what you were mentioning about in terms of where the main audience will be. I think we'll get there sooner than later, to tell you the truth. All right, let's move on to hobby headlines. So PSA and eBay, they're partnering up once again. Just recently, they had announced that for most PSA graded cards that are sold on eBay, you can check up the pop report right on the eBay listing instead of going to the PSA website. That was a few months ago. And you know what? I've used this several times, like looking through for cards on eBay, and to be honest, it's pretty useful. So I like that added feature on eBay. Now, PSA announced that you can get your cards graded by PSA directly from the eBay checkout. So essentially, if you buy any raw card that's worth $250 or more, there will now be an option to check PSA grading with one click. And they also advertise that there's no forms and no extra shipping necessary, and the process is protected by their eBay authenticity guarantee. So, first question for you, Hyung. Is this a good idea? Because there's already people out there, you can expect the criticism. There's already people out there commenting on how, without being able to inspect the cards before sending it off like we normally do, there'll be a lot more PSA 5s, 6s, and 7s coming onto the market. So yeah, what do you think about this overall?
I don't disagree with that last statement, first of all. I think there's going to be a lot more, cards that aren't graded to people's expectations. Right. But I think that, again, it's going to be an evolutional thing, because we talked about this, for the last 2 years of why Fanatics, why PSA, why all these big players in the game, eBay, are are basically going to separate themselves by providing more value where other people can't. And to me, that's the game that they've been playing. And whether you like it or not, from an overall architect kind of standpoint, it makes sense. There's a lot of value. I would be, for instance, interested in something like this. Now, how it works, that's a whole different question. And I think that's where a lot of people are stuck. They focus on how is it going to work. So I have other concerns. So for instance, well, what happens if they do get a PSA 5? Are you going to file a return? Are there returns?
Right.
And then it's like, okay, is it the seller's responsibility for doing full transparency? Do we implement AI grading from that standpoint where this is considered near mint to mint from an AI perspective, and you roll the die, whatever it may be? Who knows? We won't know how it's all going to unfold. And this is what we're saying. If we don't try, we will never unmask those problems to begin with. And this is kind of like that evolution we've always been talking about. But from the larger scale, you got to remember, what was Fanatics' objective is to streamline the process for collectors, to make it easier for them to now submit, to make it all in-house because they have the shared resources that other companies don't. Mm-hmm. So for me, I like it. I like it because it's making the hobby better. Whether you agree or disagree, I'm looking at it from that lens. So that's the way I see it. It really doesn't hurt. Now, for sure, all those questions, valid questions, and those are going to need to be addressed, because if you look at it from that lens, yes, absolutely, it's going to be a crapshoot.
Yeah, I love your point about, you're mentioning the other concerns that you have. If you label the card, if you're a seller and you label the card as near mint to mint, but it comes back a PSA 5, who's to blame? Right. Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I totally agree with you. If we don't try, then we won't know other issues that might come up too. Right? Like, we're talking about things that we could think of going wrong, but there might be even more if we don't try. And I think that's a good thing, because then you could address those problems. And if you're serious about providing this service long term, you got to address them anyways. Right? So I definitely agree with you on that. The other thing is, this is really for flippers, like people that want to flip raw to grade. Obviously, they're going to be more concerned about how this process is. But if you're more of a collector, like I just bought once Vladimir Guerrero, our boy, signed his $500 million contract, I'm like, I need a card to commemorate this moment. So I got a 2022 or 2023, was it? The Topps Heritage Red Ink auto with the CN Tower in the background. Yeah. And it was a PSA 9. It's fine. But if it was raw, I would have wanted that anyways. And maybe I just want it authenticated. And so that's a great service for me to use. Right. I don't need to receive it and then ship it out myself. If you could do all of that in one click, that's amazing. So there are, use cases for other people other than flippers. For sure. That's what I'm saying.
Do you think that eBay opens it up to all grading companies?
Amazing question, because that was one of my other follow-up questions, because to me, that makes sense, right? Like, I mean, it's another question entirely to ask if the other grading companies are ready for it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, that's a great idea, but Beckett or CGC might not have that capacity or capability even to do it now. But I think it's in eBay's best interest to have a drop-down menu. Do you want to send it off to PSA, BGS? Like, that's a no-brainer for eBay, I think.
For sure. I agree. I think it's going to be a system where it's available for all grading. I would like that as a consumer. I don't want, if I just have PSA as the option, I think as a consumer, like, I want to be able to send to SGC, BGS. Maybe some people don't play in that game, but I think there's value there. I think it's a no-brainer for Beckett, SGC, and any other grading company to do it, because it's literally free sales for them. It's literally free sales. So
for sure,
yeah, like it's I see it happening. Again, it's just a matter of how it's all going to unfold is the tricky part. But Yeah, absolutely. There's value. And then I think internally, from a seller's perspective, there has to be a way to create more disclosure within the card itself. So whether that's a technology being implemented where now it gives it approximate grade or whatever, like a raw card review from an AI perspective, where it's given accurate and a range. And that's the concern I have is it can't be, okay, this is near mint to mint and then comes back a PSA 5. Like that's just a nightmare waiting to happen. So those are the little concerns that are going to happen, but I don't think they're in the same problem as kind of like what actually moves the needle from a macro lens.
For sure. And I think that's all part and parcel to like this whole demand for more transparency from grading companies. Mm-hmm. Like that's all we essentially want. And I think maybe something like this pushes that along 100%. To demand more transparency, right? Mm-hmm. So, like off the top of my head, if there's express notes now. If you have the express service for PSA, they'll give you notes. I mean, it's not in depth. I tried it once and it was like 3 words, like surface, nameplate, tag, like something like, they need to be more detailed, I think, in my opinion. But maybe you have notes for every card that that gets automatically submitted to PSA. Maybe that's a service that's now offered, right? And if it comes back less than, you have an option. If it's going to be less than PSA 7, don't slab it. Or do you know what I mean? Like that could be another like option that yes, a minimum. And I think they already have that, so they could just add that feature on the eBay checkout list, right? So that's some other ideas that you could play around with and see how many people actually use that feature. The other thing I want to ask you too is, and we already kind of talked about it with whether other grading companies should be included in this, but is there anything else that other grading and competing companies can do to kind of retain or hold on to their market share? Because something like this, honestly, if Beckett or CGC, and I know SGC is part of collectors, so they're part of the family still, or even Tag, like I feel like if they don't do anything and PSA continues to be this aggressive, it's going to be there's going to be a point where PSA will be the only game in town. So is there anything else do you think that the other grading companies can do to compete? And I know I always ask this whenever we talk about grading, but I feel like it's more urgent now.
I think the original logical response would be finding a solution from a product or service standpoint, but from my perspective, it's all a marketing standpoint and how you tell the narrative. Because if you break down, if I say, Clark, PSA and BGS, let's talk about their history. Let's talk about, their top cards that ever sold in whatever slab. Let's talk about all the assets each company has. I wouldn't say that PSA is head over heels on BGS.
Right.
Someone new coming into the hobby, what do you think their initial reaction would be in that? They would say PSA is head over heels,
yes,
against BGS. But that's my point. If you're able to create the right narrative and the right story, so listen up, BGS marketing. Like, I think they have so much assets. That's why I'm a big believer in BGS, because of the assets it has, the rich history it has. There are good opportunities for them to, tell their own story. They don't have to be a second place or third place to PSA. They could tell their own authentic story where they bring superb value to the sports hobby and community, because they have been for the last however many years they've sure. existed, right? So it requires excellent leadership, and that's what we were hoping with the purchase, of BGS not too long ago, that these leaders would take that initiative to kind of like be relevant in today's society, because that's what's selling at the end of the day. If you see the moves that PSA is making, these are big time moves in terms of a marketing play. If you see Topps right now, and we've talked about it since that whole, marketing stunt with the Julio Rodriguez back in 2022 when we're like, man, Fanatics is really going hard on marketing. And look at it now. It's working. And it's the same thing. Why is PSA working? Why isn't BGS working right now? It's the marketing. It's not the product or service. Of course, you want to be evolutionary with the product and services that you offer from a value standpoint. Absolutely. That's important. But if you really want to compete in today's game against a big dog like PSA, it's like you gotta go all in on the marketing and media and narration. And that's where the separating factor is from the two.
For sure. And I think one of the things that Beckett in particular might find challenging is they're this huge legacy company. So I'm sure, I don't know how many of the OGs are still there, but I think you do need some fresh thinking at the top to spend, like you said, more marketing dollars. Like if you look at PSA, how many athletes have they got into their office just shooting content? Mike Trout, Josh Young, Bobby Witt, Corbin Carroll, like just from baseball. How many of those players went to the BGS office in Dallas? I can't think of any off the top of my head. And maybe it's, I'm sure they don't even pay them to come in, because it seems like those baseball players I just mentioned are collectors, and they're like, yeah, sure, I'll do it on my off time to come in and let's shoot some content. You're not paying them like $100,000 just to open wax. They're like, we'll give you a free box.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point you make, because I don't see Bobby Witt Jr. going into PSA like saying, oh, darn it, I have to go to PSA. Whereas like before, when Major League Baseball partnerships happen, it would be like, oh, I got to do the shoot for whatever brand. This is excitement, but that goes hand in hand with the brand value that PSA has, and that accounts with the way they've told their story. And that's exactly what we're talking about is, when BGS has that brand value to, let's just say, Major League Baseball players or players that are relevant or that could push the needle from a media and marketing standpoint, those are the guys that you want to really sell to, because if you could sell to them, you could sell to the general public, right? And yeah, it's exactly what you said.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I was reminded when Josh Young came in to the office, the latest thing he filmed with PSA was, how PSA does like this curated collection just for the player? What do they call that? I can't remember. They did one for Tom Brady.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They did one for Mike Trout.
Yeah.
Like a pedigree, something like that, like their pedigree collection. So Josh Young filmed one because he had one of his brother and himself, a dual autograph card, and they encased it specifically as the Josh Young pedigree collection, which is cool. I mean, why can't Beckett do the exact same thing?
For sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there are certain things they could do right away. It's, sure, everyone copies everyone. That's the reality of things. But you do it in a nicer way. Like, make it a black label pedigree. Like, that's something that they already have and they could use to their advantage.
Black label is an underused asset for
Seriously.
Beckett. Crazy.
Seriously. Come on, Beckett. I think they're beginning to figure it out on the TCG side, but I mean, how rare is it in sports still? The black label, the prestige of it. It's amazing that they haven't tapped into it more.
And then I think I'm hoping that Beckett does move, because I understand slow growth too. Like slow growth, yes, is healthy, but we're in a time in society where things are changing, like infrastructures are changing. This is the time to go all in, to do something totally different than you've been doing, because what you've been doing worked in the 90s and 2000s, but it's not working in today's society. So adapt or, be a victim.
Adapt or die. Yeah. That's pretty much the alternative these days, for sure. All right. You know what? Anyone listening to this podcast, if you have any other ideas, I don't know if they would welcome them, but I think that the collectors and the investors, I think the more demand there is for it, that might get them to listen. So I don't know. We like to hear it as well, because we're always open to hearing new ideas and kind of discussing them on the pod. All right, let's move on to our next segment, Quiz Show. Okay, so I only have 3 or 4 questions for you today, but I thought these were interesting facts that I found out recently. Okay, so the first one, according to Card Ladder, this past March 2025 saw the most card transactions since they began tracking numbers in 2010. So over the past 15 years, March 2025, most card transactions, most cards sold. Okay, question is, how many cards were sold in March 2025?
Jeez.
I'll give you a multiple choice for this one.
Okay.
More than 3 million, more than 4 million, or more than 5 million?
Wow. 3 million. I'm gonna say I have no clue because 3 million is a lot to me. And 5 million is like, okay, a bigger number than 3. So for me, like from 3 to 5, it's not. If you said like 200,000, like
Right. I should
2
have done
million
that.
or 10 million, it would be like way harder. So I'm gonna say 5 million plus.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. I should have gave a much lower number, and then this would have been more dramatic. But the answer is more than 5 million.
Yeah.
5.639
Wow.
cards sold. Yeah, hobby is alive, my friends.
That's just proof that that's just marketplace growth. So
Right.
if you look at transactions, that means there are more buyers, more sellers, more transactions. So those are all bullish signs for sure.
And it doesn't include any transaction from card shows. Like there are tons more that are
Yes.
unaccounted for, right? So yeah, totally. Okay, since we talked about PSA grading and grading in general, I got a couple of grading type questions. I looked over at gemrate.com to glean some latest data. I don't know if you saw my IG reel lately. I kind of updated my reel that had the top 10 most PSA 10 graded cards. So if you saw it, you already know this answer, but for the benefit of anyone that didn't see it or doesn't know this answer, the question is, which sports card has the highest number of PSA 10 graded cards to date?
To date. Which sport?
Yeah, which sports card?
Oh,
A specific sports card. Athlete and the card.
Man, I didn't see your reel, Clark. I'm sorry. So, this is
Ouch.
yeah.
No, just kidding.
I mean, sorry, go on.
So when I did this in 2023, I mean, that IG reel kind of blew up for me. I think the number one was Juan Soto. Remember the Juan Soto
Tops
base?
update?
Yes. I
US
think that was the
300?
number one. Yeah. It is. I'll give you a clue. It is number 2 sports card now. There was one that overtook it.
Overtook it. Wow. It has to be more modern, I'm guessing. It has to be
Modern. I'll give you the year. 2023.
It has to be Victor Wembanyama.
Yep. You got
Is
it. The
Yeah, it has
Panini
to be.
Prism base rookie
Wow, that's
number
crazy.
136. Yeah.
That's crazy. Because
2023.
Zion had to be in there at one point, no? Before Soto.
Zion is number 4 on the top 10 sports card list.
How about Luis Robert PSA 10s?
Luis Robert is, he's in the top 10 as well.
Amazing.
I think number 8 or 9. So he's still
Amazing.
up there. But yes, you got it. Victor Wembanyama is base Prism. To date, 25,473 PSA 10s are out there.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to round off the top 5 sports card is Victor Wembanyama, Juan Soto, Ronald Acuna Jr.'s tops update, Zion's Panini Prism base, and Ja Morant right behind him, Panini Prism base.
I probably contributed a lot to that Ronald Acuna mix.
All right, so I gave you the top 5 sports cards, but in the top 10, if you include TCG cards, how many other sports cards are in the top 10, would you say?
If we include TCG,
Yes.
I would say, frig, I don't even know TCG. That's the thing. But I assume that it's starting to penetrate the market a lot more. So I'm going to say 30%.
So three of the top 10 are sports cards, and the rest are or the other way around.
The other way around.
3 are TCG or Pokemon cards.
Yes.
And then the other. Okay. The answer is, and this is a question because I wanted to make this point. 0. There's only one sports card in the top 10. The other 9 are TCG, specifically Pokemon cards. So it's been crazy. The Pokemon, that's why we've been having Roy on the show lately. You know, it's just the market has been heating up.
Out. Roy, you hear this? That's a sign saying that you need to be on this podcast more and share your expertise and knowledge in Pokemon.
Dude, it's already happening. I shipped him a official microphone so that he has a better audio quality one. So he's part of the team.
He started his own Instagram as well. So what you maybe give him a plug.
Mino_cards, I believe. I'll put the link. There you go, Roy. We're doing you a favor. Get some more followers, and he's even setting up at shows now. So Roy's in it for sure. But yeah, for Pokemon card collectors out there, because we've been talking about them a little bit more, the number 1 is the Charizard V from the Champions Path Elite Trainer box. And I told you that Victor Wembanyama's Prism base was 25,000 plus. The Charizard V, number 1 on the top 10 list, 46,335 PSA 10s. So that's your almost double, essentially.
That's crazy.
And then the next one is 40,412 PSA 10s is the Pikachu from the Scarlet and Violet pre-order box. Yeah. And then the Pikachu with gray hat, which I have. We talked about this on the pod when Roy was on, and he has one too. The Van Gogh Pikachu, 36,000 now, 856, 36,856. And that card's still worth $1,000 for some reason.
That's crazy.
Right? With
and
that
I was just gonna ask what our what our price is like at that pop count, which is crazy because that's what the marketplace is holding, right?
For some of those cards, it's weird. Maybe we need Roy back on because actually Roy probably doesn't know either. It's one of those things where I think the Charizard V, I could be wrong, totally wrong about this, but I don't think it's worth that much because of the 50K pop count. But the 40K pop count of the Pikachu Van Gogh is like 800 US right now.
Right.
And if you logically, it's a hobby logic. I don't know why it's worth that much. I guess the demand is so much higher. But
people usually keep these in their collection, or what do they do with it? Is it a flip, or is it more like, hey, this one is staying in the collection, and my great grandkid's gonna have this one of 45,000.
That's a great question for Roy, I think. but yeah, I feel like right now there are more flippers in the sports card business because I guess that's we're used to that, right? But
right.
If you look on Pokemon Instagram, it's growing, and they don't call them flippers. We talked about this. They call them scalpers in the Pokemon world. Yeah. So, and just like it is in the sports card side of things, there are people that hate scalpers, hate flippers, and then there are people that don't get collectors and they're old. They call them old school. It's exact same kind of dynamic.
Right. And we've experienced this in the sports card market. So if you're in this field, just remember, like, there's going to be a point in time where I don't know if 45,000 can hold at certain price points depending on market. So there has to be, some kind of correction eventually. But with that said, it's not saying that I'm not bullish on the Pokemon market. It's make sure you invest in good quality, more rare cards than the high pop count. Same kind of things that we talk about in baseball, hockey, basketball. It applies to this as well. I agree. And I don't want to talk about it anymore because I'm trying to get a first edition Pikachu card that has a much lower pop count, but I think should be valued even more. So before people realize that, let's stop talking about it until I pick one up. All right. Last quiz show question. Back to sports. Carmelo Anthony, he's going to be inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. How much did his most expensive card sell for, which was his exquisite RPA number to 15? All right. And I'm going to give you
a price comparison, which might throw you off, which maybe you think is a trap, but Cade Cunningham's one of one logo man sold for $204,000. His BGS 9 Auto 10. So his exquisite, raw, but numbered to 15. How much more do you think, or how much less do you think his card sold for?
As crazy as this sounds, I'm going to say it sold for less. I don't know how much less, but I'm going to say like 50% less. Maybe even more. So I'm talking, I maybe in the 50 to 100K range, or maybe a little above that.
It's a good guess. It's a wide range, but it sold for $43,200.
Wow. So on the bottom end of that. And I expected that. The only reason why I went higher is because I wanted to make a point. Like the Carmelo Anthony market has been rough over the past many years. So super, super undervalued for a player of that magnitude, especially if he's getting inducted. And I think that's where the market starts awakening again, right? There's so many valued cards that people start buying. It pushes the market forward. But that's crazy. 40,000 compared to the 200K. And even there's argument where, hey, is 40,000 the right price? And 200,000 of a Cade Cunningham is way overvalued. And the right market correction is that 40, 50K mark. We won't know until, a few years pass. So.
And it could change too over time, right? Maybe
For
Cade
sure.
Cunningham is the legit guy on the Pistons.
It could be $1 million card. It could be a
Right.
$20,000 card.
Exactly. So you don't know, but yeah, right now for at least it's just hobby logic
Right.
to have Cade Cunningham's card, that much more than Carmelo, because Carmelo Anthony, he's just a 10-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA, 2012, 2013 scoring champ, member of the NBA's top 75. He's just only those things, right? So
That doesn't matter. It's how many Instagram followers he has. In this day and age.
In this day and age. All right, let's finish off this episode with our weekly segment we call Pick One. And as usual, Hyung, do you want to start things off for us?
Yeah, and I'm sorry to my baseball listeners, but we're not going baseball today, and I'm actually gonna bring.
I got one.
You
right
got one.
after,
Perfect.
Yeah.
Because we talked about WWE a little bit. I want to kind of ask you a question. So. I believe that, and this, I have no reason to it. I just based on the research I did with the wrestling market and where it's going and where I project it in 5 years. 1982, the wrestling Hulk Hogan PSA 10, there's 9 out there, is the next mini kind of Mickey Mantle 52 tops of the wrestling market. In 5 years, let's just say. With the PSA 9 selling for 132K, there's Pop 18. So that kind of gives you, okay, if you're to dissect the holy grail of wrestling, everybody would agree it's the 1982 PSA 10 Hulk Hogan. None have sold, so we wouldn't know the actual price. So let's just, based on that 132K sale, let's just say, you know what? Somebody's willing to give it up for 500K. Okay. Do you buy that? And with this pick one, the rule is it's a 5-year hold. So in 2030, we're doing a blue chip buy. Are you buying that 1982 Hulk Hogan PSA 10?
Yeah.
Okay. For 500K, or last sold March 20th, was a 101 patch logo man of Victor Wembanyama, non-auto. So it's National Treasures patch logo man 101. A PSA 9, doesn't really matter, but it sold for 528K. You got to hold these two for the next 5 years. Which one are you holding?
Easy. And I know where you're going with the question, but I'm going for the more certain choice, which is, for me, Victor Wembanyama's 1-of-1 logo man. I think his injury is a small setback, but I do agree that he's going to be a legit star. And then, like for me, when he came in, I didn't know how his body would hold up. Obviously, this is a setback. No one expected the blood clot, but it seems like he's, doing his best to keep his body in condition, and B, he's stable, unlike some basketball stars, that off the court antics. Like, I don't have to worry about that with Wemby. So, and as the 1-of-1 logo man, highly desirable in the basketball card community. So I think there's demand built in already, and I trust the player mid to long term. So that's why I'm going with Wemby. But I do get the appeal for going the other way because, like we talked about off the top, like the growing popularity of wrestling. That being said, there's still some questions about how popular wrestling will be in the card community. I think it'll get there, but I think those are two different questions. How popular will wrestling, the sport, WWE, the brand be versus cards of WWE? I think those are two different things.
And do you think, what do you think the high level price of each card would be? Like the Wemby 1-of-1. What do you see that going in 5 years? If it's $528K right now for a logo man, but it's a non-auto, remember, and he does have a couple, 1-of-1s that are desirable.
I think they can both be $1 million cards. I think they can both be $1 million cards. Yeah, Victor Wembanyama, if he comes back, plays like he has been, breaking all the defensive records in season 2 and 3. And, and the Spurs get better and he's in the playoffs, that's easily $1 million card when it goes back on the market in 5 years. With wrestling, even before you set the 500,000 price point, that's what I was thinking, like 5x multiplier if it goes back on the market for PSA 10. And if a couple things break right, and then more people are getting into the wrestling card market, I think for sure that Hulk Hogan card in particular can hit $1 million for sure. So
what would be that price? Like we said, $500K. So what's that price for you? If I say $350K, would that change it? What's that price for you compared to the $528? Because remember, you're spending $528,000 cash, right? What's that price? I just want to know from your standpoint where the buy kind of switches.
This is like totally arbitrary, okay? I'm just going to tell you that. But if I could get half price, I'll take it. $250.
Yeah, $250? Okay. I see. Okay. I think for me, the Wemby would be more fun. It would be more involved, and whereas the Hulk Hogan is kind of like, who would do this? Like, this is the most insane investment. But then after 5 years, they're like, this is a great investment. Like, it's a sneaky play. So I think you're right in that sense. I would enjoy the Wemby more. But I truly believe that the Hulk Hogan card could potentially be so massive that it would surpass the Wemby without the risk.
Right.
Sure. So that's my only thing. And I think for me, that price point would be about $400K. But at $500K, I think I would choose the Wemby. But at $400K, I'm buying the Hulk Hogan.
Okay. I like that. That's a good one. All right. I'll go with my 1v1. And I thought I was talking big numbers, but after yours, the $500K, this is more at a discount. $50,000, $51,000 to be more precise. And we talked about this a little bit when it comes to Shohei Ohtani, the non-licensed versus the licensed. Who was it with? Josh, was it? Like his card, the white box 1-of-1 versus
Josh,
the red ink. So this is on a much higher scale, okay? The 2018 Donruss Optic Rated Rookie, 1984 Signatures Gold Vinyl. Okay, so it's a 1-of-1. It's graded PSA 8. Sold for $1,850.
Crazy.
March
Do you have the picture?
30th, 2025. Yep, I can share that with you.
Okay.
And this is 2018 autograph, as you can see.
Beautiful card.
It's original. Beautiful card. But it is unlicensed because it's Donruss Optic. Oh, actually, is it? Yes.
Yep.
You can't see it. Yeah, it's unlicensed. Or, speaking of Logo Man, the 2023 Topps Definitive 1 of 1 MLB Logo Man card graded PSA 1010.
Wow.
And it's his newer autograph.
Is that his first
Logo Man?
Yeah, first Logo Man, or is it 2022, 2023? I think 2023.
I don't know for sure.
And they were the same price?
51,000, sold in December of 2024, yes.
First off, I think the funny thing is it is unlicensed for the 2018, the rookie auto. But I think the only person in this hobby that can make unlicensed cool is Shohei Ohtani. Like, Victor Wembanyama tried. I mean, it's not there yet, unlicensed, but I think Ohtani's the only one who makes unlicensed cool. It doesn't matter. Anything he does is pretty cool. So that card, even though it's unlicensed, I think there's a huge market for a type of card like that. With that said, I like the future potential of that Logo Man just because I believe that's where we're going with kind of like that baseball grail.
Right.
5-10 years, like we talked about, the rookie debut patch, is going to take over that first Bowman Chrome Superfractor one day. When is it going to happen? Who knows? But as of right now, it's still Superfractor, but it's changed a lot. So I feel it the same way where if we were talking Bowman Chrome Superfractor, right now, I'd probably go with the Bowman Chrome Superfractor, obviously. But a Logo Man, even though it's not his rookie year, even though it's not his old autograph, I think that's the card to kind of go with. I think it has huge, huge upside, especially in this Ohtani market. So I'm going to go with the Logo Man 101.
Okay. All right. Interesting. This is easy for me, but I thought, different factors could make you change your mind. The old auto versus the new auto. Obviously, the licensed versus unlicensed, and then the gold vinyl, which looks like exactly like a Superfractor, but it's a gold vinyl, 1 of 1. All those different factors will come into play, but my name's not Will. It's unlicensed. Forget it. I'm going with the licensed. Just call me a licensed snob. I can't help it. I just can't help it. I can't do it.
Yeah, so, I feel you.
So for that reason, simply for that reason, I'm going with the 2023 Topps. The definitive, and I know grading doesn't matter with 1 of 1, but the PSA 1010 is an added bonus for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in to Cards to the Moon once again. And we'll have a brand new episode for you next week. Talk to you then. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.